Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, September 23rd. I'm going to read the agenda. 7 p.m. citizens input. Topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. 7:05 p.m. Selectmen's update. 7:10 p.m. Board of Selectmen will discuss the draft warrant articles. At 7:40 p.m., Sharon Wasson and Chris Gallagher will discuss the release of subdivision funding. At 7:50, the board will discuss the town council RFP edits. At 8, the board will discuss the final revised open meeting law complaint procedure and vote on that. At 8:05, Dave Feldman will lead a town hall working group update. And then at 8:15, Bill Keegan will provide us with the town manager update. John, can you lead the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So, being 7 o'clock, any citizens' input? Seeing none. I'll give a brief selectmen's update. Just wanted to start off by thanking Mike Johns and Bob Siteman for the terrific job that they did leading and organizing the POW MIA tribute ceremony that was held on the Commons this past Saturday. It was well attended, and they really provided a meaningful tribute to those service people who were remembered at the ceremony. So thank you again, Mike and Bob. Also wanted to remind everybody to check out tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on CBS, Survivor. Watch Valerie, one of our local police officers, Valerie Collins, and her husband Jeremy as they star on that show. So it's very exciting, and it's looking pretty close to Cumberland Farms opening up pretty soon, so just keep an eye out for that too. Yeah. So that's all I have for updates. We're ahead of schedule now. Do you want to do some action items?
Sure. First is a notice of the municipal elections to the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization. It was information sent to the Board of Selectmen. The next one is there was legislation passed that would allow liquor stores to open at 10 a.m. on Sundays. And although under this law, these licenses are entitled as a matter of right to open at 10 a.m. and as such do not need the approval of the local licensing authorities, licensees must notify the local licensing authority about the change of hours. So we have an application for a change of hours from the Third Generation Enterprises, Inc., doing business as Route 1 Liquor Mart. So I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the change of hours application for the Third Generation Enterprises, Inc., doing business as Route 1 Liquor Mart.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Under discussion, it's a state law that changed, and they're notifying us. I don't think we need to or should make an action on it, correct?
No, we have to, because it's a change. I talked to Sandra about this today.
Yeah, we can't say no.
Yeah.
Right.
Right,
But you still
but-
have to hold a hearing process. You have to go through the process.
And what it is, they just had to fill out the form for change of hours, and that's what this
It's not hearing
is.
part, yeah, right.
Okay,
That's all it
so
is.
even if we wanted to say no, we couldn't, but we
Right.
still
You can't say
approve
no.
it? Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it does require a process, unfortunately.
Right, so any other establishments who want to use the 10 a.m. opening will also have to fill out a form, and it's just for liquor stores.
And that's effective in October, right?
October 23rd, I believe.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All set? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
The next one is the public event application for the Halloween parade to be held on October 25th from 2 to 4 p.m. This is produced by the Department of Recreation. Debbie Giordano is the Recreation Director, and the Halloween parade is gather around Town Hall. There'll be fire trucks, kids dressed up in costumes, so it should be been very successful in past years, and it should be successful again.
So I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the application for a public event for the the Department of Recreation for the Halloween Parade on October 25th, 2 to 4 p.m.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. And that's all the action items.
Okay. So how's your golf game, John?
It's, it's over.
It's over for the season. Okay. We have just a couple more minutes till we get to the next item.
Based the way I played last week, mine should be over.
Bring on the snow.
Yeah, that's right. Terrible.
Leading up to the discussion on the warrant articles, can we just have a brief discussion on kind of the clerical stuff? We've got 4 presentations tonight on some of the articles. The list that we had last night, some have been removed. One's on the warrant that wasn't voted in last time that I'm seeing. Can we put together a master list of warrant articles with numbers, with dates, and on the upcoming meetings leading up to town meeting? Because I'm finding it very hard to, you know, we've got 4 presentations, but it doesn't say what warrant articles they're presenting. It's very difficult to follow for me.
Okay. The,
Which one's on there that wasn't before?
Well,
There's an article that, for the building height, which may be fine, but that's not one of the ones that we voted in last meeting, that I'm seeing on the list that we voted.
I believe it was it?
It'd be nice to say, all right, here's 12
One of the-
articles, here's the ones that we're
Okay.
voting, here's the,
Yeah,
you know, and maybe there's a column of no action or withdrawn.
I'm sorry, I have to apologize to you, but I thought that was on the...
there were 3 planning board articles from the last time, right, Sharon?
Right.
Same 3 are here? Articles 6, 7, and 8?
I- 7, 8, and 9, I believe. There was one that was removed, so the numbering has changed a little bit since the last time.
We had 9 that we voted, and then there was 2 placeholders, one for
Right.
the Public Works and one for the,
Oak Street lots, yeah,
Camp, Lincoln Hill.
right.
But I don't see anyone in here from the planning board for the building height, which is Article 8.
Sharon?
There were 3 articles I submitted on November the 3rd to see
Right. I understood there would be 3 on it.
And there's three here.
Yeah.
the definition of accessory apartment, adding the map, which was my oversight in the spring, and then definition of height.
I think that's a good idea, though, Jim, just to keep a running tally so that we can keep track of what's on first.
Okay.
So you had given a cover letter, right? That's what I'm looking for, so I'm sorry, Sharon. Okay, the overlay district,
Yeah,
definition of height. Okay, which is fine here, but that's not one of the ones that we voted last time, is what I'm saying. If you look on the list that we voted moving
it says
forward.
number 9, zoning bylaw, Foxborough Center overlay.
Correct.
Right.
That's fine, that's one of the ones Sharon's bringing, but there's
Okay.
nothing that we voted last week
Oh, I
on
see.
height. And it may be a very good article, and she may have presented to the selectmen, but that wasn't on the list that we voted last night.
Right.
That's why it's very confusing for me on what was passed out last week. And the people that we're hearing, there's no numbers, it's very difficult to,
Do you want the list from last week? I have the list.
I have
You
it.
have that
There's-
list from
yeah.
last week? Okay.
there was 9 items, and then the 2 that
There were the
weren't on the
2.
list that were handed that night was the
Oh,
Public Works Building, which is an article,
Yeah,
and then the Camp Lincoln Hill to sell the property.
right.
On the remaining 9 that was printed, there's accessory apartment, overlay district, auctioning off Dexter Road, removing the auditorium restrictions, the liquor licenses, sign by law, constables, but there's nothing about building height.
Whereas had 3 zoning bylaw changes. And the auditorium and Casey Road were on the annual town meeting warrant. So those aren't necessary now.
And I'm just, that's my point. They're not necessary, so I guess we're gonna vote them off tonight. But the ones that you want on here were not on the list. And I'm not saying it's your fault. You probably submitted it to the selectmen. Maybe, I don't know, but it's not on here. So, on a point of order, maybe we should reopen the warrant to vote it before she makes that presentation. Or we're listening to something that
Yep, we
the
can do
town
that.
hasn't approved yet.
We can do that. So why don't we start by, can I have a motion to reopen the warrant?
Second that.
All those in favor, any discussion?
Was that a motion or a request for a motion?
That was a request for a motion.
Okay.
So, can I have a motion to reopen the warrant, please?
Okay, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen reopen the warrant to discuss the possible addition of one other warrant item.
Seconded by David. All those, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
So right now, there's 12 current open articles. Right?
So we have removed the Dexter Street article. It's no longer in this packet. And the Oak Street article has been removed.
Yeah, sure.
Can I ask how, we voted to have, as a board, to vote these in. Who took it off? So this is where I'm confusing, because we had two appear last time that no one's ever seen. I was getting calls from people from Oak Street, all upset that we voted something that no one's
Oh,
ever
I'm sorry.
discussed with them publicly. The other boards had meetings afterwards, and everything hit the fan that way, that somebody brought it forward. Now, if you went to the Conservation Commission, they're saying the selectmen brought it forward. At the last meeting, was saying it was Lorraine, or it was the Asset Review Committee. So when we voted, it was on, and now we're sitting here and it's off. Who is putting it on and off? And I'm not picking on the Oak Street, but I think that has manifested itself in a lot of confusion and not having a master list of where all of this is going and who's putting them on and off. There's no author, there's no title, there's no set of dates.
Actually, I thought we were going to determine which ones are coming off tonight.
But she's saying they're off now.
Okay.
And we have never had a discussion of it putting it on. If the Board of Selectmen put an article on,
Right.
we should have discussed it at the meeting
Right,
before it was put on. And now the Board of Selectmen has taken it off, and again, there's no discussion.
right. I
So
think,
I don't know where to go with this.
so the list that you still have this list from last week, right? This is the list.
The list
This
that was
is-
given us
was-
had 9 items, and then
With
2 more
10
appeared in, that I handwritten
Right.
at the last meeting, correct?
Right.
So that's why I'm saying
Right.
there was 11. It didn't include the one that we're voting on tonight, so now there's 12.
Correct.
And
that's
as of
what I
last
have.
meeting, there was 12.
Right. So there's 12 total right now.
Correct.
All right. So I guess the action you have to take now is do you want to include, based upon what people have submitted to us for information, we have prepared a draft warrant with only with those information that we have to submit further. Now, if we want, we can always add and add these things back in.
Yeah.
But based upon what we have right now, these are the articles that we're putting forward to you tonight.
So tonight, there's 12 items that we're going to discuss, and there's,
You yourselves, the
Yep.
board, can actually, will have to vote to take those things off now.
that's my point.
Yeah.
We were just hearing that they're already taken off.
No, you can't take them off until you officially take them off, all right?
So what ones are you saying?
They were
taken
just put
off?
on as a list last week, but this is.
No, but and I understand that,
Okay.
and I agree with what you're saying, but I'm hearing that items have been taken off already, and that's what I don't
No,
understand.
officially, you take them off tonight.
Officially, they would come off tonight, Jim.
Yeah.
We would have to discuss them, but based on the discussions that we had at the last meeting where we said that there was going to be a meeting with the Conservation Commission, that Bob Bodie was going to discuss that issue,
Yeah.
and the feedback, I've already
Yeah.
talked with Bill,
Yeah.
and we got the feedback. We said it was going to be a decision of the Concom as to whether or not that would be an article to be brought forward, and they decided no. So it's
Okay.
not on the list, so certainly we would discuss it tonight, that's what would happen.
Okay, I guess and I'm picking on that one article, but you put it on with discussions from the town manager, and now you took it off with discussions, and none of us have
It-
been involved in that. And
No,
so
no, no, no.
it shouldn't be a Board of Selectmen article if that's the process. And I'm smiling, I'm saying this, because this is just, it's very difficult to follow who brings forward, and there's nothing to say whose article it is.
Right.
So,
I think we did ask earlier on who would be the sponsor of the article.
Right. But we never got to that point because the follow-up meeting was held that Monday night,
Right.
last Monday night, where the board, I wasn't even at the meeting, but the board, the Conservation Commission and the Recreation Commission apparently met jointly with them and decided that they did not think it was a good idea to bring that forward. So that information was going to be brought up as part of the number 10 discussion tonight. So and my recommendation was that you don't include it at this point.
So we're going to use this list from last week.
Right. I
and
think
go
that's
through
the right
each
way to
one.
go, and then we'll go through them.
And that's
then,
when, at that
and
point,
then we'll
we're going to
have-
be discussing them.
Right.
Is that it?
That was the whole idea, was to try and go through this list.
I
So
hope
it's-
so.
Okay.
Because it's not what I'm hearing before you came in. The items that were removed,
Okay.
and the items weren't just matching what the presentation was going to come.
Well,
So it's,
the presentation is
this
different.
the
It's-
town
it's-
meeting is a big thing for me.
I understand.
Special town
Fair enough.
meeting, annual, the way it's presented, the way
Right.
it's advertised, the way that neighbors understand what the items are. And we put
Yeah.
items on here and have approved them with no public input whatsoever. The Oak Hill. Nothing was advertised other than when we got here, it was written in. And it's not fair to the people that are out there that wanted the opportunity to participate, that didn't get that opportunity to participate. And we only do it twice a year.
Sure.
And if we're doing it twice a year on this, with some pretty heavy articles coming up, the sign bylaw, the town meeting bylaw, and we're trying to struggle with 12 items in 6 weeks' time with no schedule and no follow-through on when things are going to get done, it's
Well-
a concern for me.
Yeah, we actually, the list that we prepared for you last week was a list of those items that people had identified as possible issues. So we opened we asked the board to open the warrant to possibly include these issues. The secondary meeting, the second.
Issues or
Items,
Okay,
articles,
yeah.
okay? So then we came back to, and I said to you last week, I would come back to you with the detail on those items at the next meeting with actual language for the articles, which we have tonight, and then the response in further detail on the other remaining items. The one item that we didn't have on here, of course, was the one that you just opened the warrant for. So I think we're doing what I said we were going to do last week, and that was to bring the items forward. Now, I can tell you that there are 4 items here that we won't be bringing forward to because things have happened between now and the last meeting to present to you, so you won't be able to. So my recommendation won't be to not include them. So we can change the process any way you'd like. I mean, it's just the way I
guess
understood the process.
I'd like to know what the process is, and I'm
Fair
not
enough.
trying to get on a soapbox, but
No, that's fine.
the Oak Hill, the Camp Lincoln Hill
Yeah.
was presented as a Board of Selectmen potential article, placeholder.
Mm-hmm.
That article went through a miserable death last time, and rightfully so.
Mhm.
We spent money on attorney to tell us, it's very unattainable.
Mhm.
It went to the Conservation Commission. The Board of Open Park and Open Space Committee that we appointed, the Conservation Rec and the Open Space, have been working on that property for over a year with the scouts, coming up with a plan. And all of a sudden, people are finding out that the selectmen want to sell it in context to a lot of other stuff that are going on. It was a lot of needless aggravation from neighbors and people, and it was sponsored by the selectmen. If it was sponsored by one individual, put that person's name on it. If it was sponsored by the Asset Review Committee, then they should sponsor it. But how does the selectmen, having gone through this a year ago, do this again right now without any discussion? So it gets on there.
Jim, this wouldn't
and then
have
gets
come,
taken
this
off.
wouldn't have come on if we hadn't had a conversation with the chairman of the Conservation Commission, who was willing to discuss this with his committee.
Right.
So
And that's how it did happen.
the only thing that brought this on here. This was not
Understood,
forced on
But
anyone.
if that was the case, it should have been a board discussion to go forward rather than an individual. Because I disagree, and I would have liked the opportunity to have some insight in some, this didn't show up until we sat down at the table last time.
But I think if it made it
Okay.
to the warrant, Jim, then you would have had the opportunity to express your disagreement
But
with it.
not as a Board of Selectmen article.
Why not?
Then if it was going to be a Board of Selectmen article, then the Board of Selectmen brings it forward, not an individual. If it was a vote and it was a 4-1 and I lost, I wouldn't be having this issue. But to get something that's that important at our meeting, not in our packet, to be surprised at the meeting, not having the ability to go back in time to see what happened over the year, to have it go to all these board meetings and come back with almost zero discussion, which is fine, but I don't want my name attached to that as a selectman.
So you're saying the Conservation Commission should have been the sponsor?
No, if the town, if the selectman wants to sell the property, then it needs to be the selectman. If the
Right.
conservation says, I've got all this land, I think, if maybe we sell 3 Form As, it gives me money to do something in the back, and it works great. Since we went to them, Lorraine went to them with this idea, the thing blew up. And it came back to us and the same, I'm saying to myself, how does a selectman bring something this forward to sell land with no discussion? Nothing in the packet, not an opportunity to get any type of education of what happened over the last year. David wasn't here. I'm not sure if you were here, but it would have been nice to say, we're going to look at selling it. We tried it last year. These are the pitfalls. These are the state issues. These are the vernal pool issues. This is what we heard. But there was none of that dialogue. And there was just a lot of needless anxiety for 3 other boards who've been working on that property to be blindsided by it. And we're sitting here saying, well, it's, we'll just take it off the list. I'm not coming down on you, but Lorraine, I'm saying this discussion at this table is lacking right now. And that item, along with the RFP issue that's coming up, if these things can happen at the table, I think we'll all be better off. And we wouldn't be,
My point was, Jim, is that Bill and I had a discussion with the chairman. If we were made aware of the work that had been being done on that property at that time, I think that would have made an impact on our discussion, but that never came up. So we were unaware of anything
it's
that...
what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Did you ask that question? There's 3 appointed and elected boards.
We're talking to the chairman
of one board
who works closely with the open space recreation group. They're all working together. So
that's the reason to have this discussion, because I'm getting an entirely different story from many angry board members that are on those boards saying, how did this happen? So if Bob Bodie says it's a good idea to bring it, but I can't imagine.
Well, I actually did speak with some of the committee members on the Conservation Commission on Friday morning, and I said, if you are angry with Bob, there was no need to be angry with Bob, because Bob was approached by us to say, is there an interest in doing this?
Right.
And that was the conversation. And they said it wasn't that we were falling on our sword to say, well, you got to do this for us, or if we did do it, what would be the willingness to do it? Was there something that they wanted in exchange for that? And that's how the conversation went. And Bob had a couple thoughts about how that might happen, and he said, but let me bring it back to my board. So, well, just so you know that this, the warrant's going to be open Tuesday night, so we need, we want to try and, have a placeholder for this in case you do agree that's the right thing to do.
And I agree, and that process is great, but at what point did the board have the opportunity to have all that information before we voted?
Fair enough.
Okay, because this is not a Bill and Lorraine article, this is a board of selectmen that should have had some insight into that. Because there was a lot of, Gellerman had written a letter. That would have been nice for us to discuss before we went to the Conservation Commission. The meeting minutes, it would have been nice to go back and say, boy, and I think from what I'm hearing from the Conservation, they all kind of looked and said, what's changed in the last year? Why are we even doing this? So I think it would have been saved a lot of aggravation if we had that discussion. And did you go to the meeting, the Conservation meeting?
No.
Did anyone from the board go to explain what we're trying to do?
No, and one point I asked this is, I know there was a meeting between the Recreation Commission and the Conservation Commission. I said, I made the point, I said, it would have been nice if we had been notified that was a meeting too, because if we had known that, we would have come to explain it.
So a week, 2 days early, I'm sure they're sitting at home saying, boy, it would have been nice if we were notified that we were doing this and we would have come to the selection.
Listen, I think at the end of the day, I understand your point, and I accept your concern. The issue was, it was an innocent issue, as I saw it, and I think it was an opportunity because the warrant was open to try and address something which had been an outstanding issue. I personally did not understand that there was a lot of baggage attached to it the way it was, because that wasn't conveyed during the discussion. And we probably should have.
But if it was in front of the board, you would have heard it loud and clear.
Fair enough,
if you hear it from one
enough.
person, it's a little.
Your point is made that if we are contemplating articles, maybe we have a conversation about the articles before we even open the warrant. Is that your point?
And just
so-
from the beginning, you know, a lot of
Fair
towns, they'll put it in the paper what the, you know, at least names to it or something.
Yep.
But it's just such a, and this is what we're working from, and if it's confusing at this table and people are speaking that's not on it, just imagine the frustration at home trying to figure out, all right, when's the town meeting and what's gonna be on it? It just little better lines of communication, that's all.
Understood.
Okay.
Very good.
All right, so let me just check back in. We're all set with, we've opened it.
Yeah, you've opened it. Have
Now we
you,
need to add,
you added the zoning bylaw on the height issue, Sharon?
Yes, amending the definition of height in the zoning
Okay.
bylaw, so it complies with the state building code.
Okay.
okay.
All right. And so you have, right now, before you have 12 items under consideration. From what we gather from the warrant that's been prepared, the funding for the, Article 1 is the, is that the budget adjustments? Okay. And Article 2, which technically isn't on your list either, by the way. Budget adjustments is not.
That's the police officer.
That's the police officer, okay, so that's the police officer. For Article 2, Article 1? Article 1, okay, is the police officer. Funding for the town hall project is actually Article 3. Article 2 is the
DPW administrator.
DPW, right, the DPW building, which is number 11 on the list. And Article 4 is the sign bylaw. Which is pretty big, actually. And we'll get into the conversation of the bylaw, and there was some significant adjustments to that. And then Article 5 was the liquor license issue. Article 6 was the zoning bylaw deleting
No, it's the accessory apartments.
accessory apartments. And Article 7 is the zoning bylaw for the adding of the Foxborough overlay district. And Article 8 is the height article that you just, so,
So we need to vote to add Article 8.
Article 8, right, which on the list is number 12.
All right. Can I have a motion to add Article 8? Please.
That's what we just voted for?
Well, you added to the
Did we-
list, you added to the list, so it's on the list.
Yeah.
So effectively, it's in your consideration for tonight.
Okay, I'll move that we include Article 8, which is a article submitted by the planning board to redefine the height of buildings to comply with current state law.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right,
And
so,
then, so tonight you have presentations on the police officer. You have, the chief is here for that. And the funding for the town hall project, I'll present on that. The amendments to the Foxborough general bylaws on the constables. That's ours, I believe.
What numbers
I
are
think
Constables is not in
we
there.
took that off. We
Yeah,
took
we
that
took
off,
that
right,
off,
we took that
right.
off. And that was the amendments to the Foxborough general bylaws, the sign bylaw.
Right.
Sharon will speak to that. The petition to of the additional liquor licenses, there's more to come on that, but that's, and the chairman will get into that. The other one, we did not do the petition for the auction of the 3 acres off of Dexter Road, right? And we have a presentation on the accessory apartment and the overlay districts. and the height issue. So, and that's all we have. And
So-
DPW building, Roger will speak to that.
So should we start with Article 1, the
Yes.
Chief O'Leary?
I hadn't even checked to see where it was on the roster of
Yeah,
this
you're
special.
actually number one, so how's that?
Good evening. As the board is aware, because you were all engaged in bringing about a solution for Patriot Place and bringing Splitsville to the community, part of that mitigation was to provide funding to add personnel to the police department. I was meeting with our finance director earlier last week, and we were discussing what the real need is in terms of a timeline for hiring an individual. And in consultation with Randy, I came up with a figure that we would be needing for the balance of this fiscal year. And that is the money that would be transferred from an account held by the town into the police budget, so we could have some movement on that personnel. Right now, we do have one recruit officer that was part of the regular budget that's in the training academy. He's in about his 8th week and should finish up in December. And I'm making arrangements for any new hires to be attending a January class, either in Randolph, where they're going to be opening a new and an additional basic training program, or down in Plymouth later in the start of 2015.
Any questions for Chief?
This funding in perpetuity, or is there a sunshine clause at the end that it ends?
My understanding that the agreement that was signed is in perpetuity.
So this is all from the...
Correct, the
Okay.
settlement.
That's right. Thank you.
So, Chief, the new police officer related to this budget transfer, when is their start date?
It will probably be between mid-December and mid-January. So we allocated a certain number of weeks that that person might be on our payroll.
Okay.
Question for Randy, actually. Randy, I see that you've taken the step to appropriately increase the OPEB funding.
Right, well, that's when we had initially discussed the mitigation. It was all-inclusive cost of the police officer, and as we all know, the retiree health benefits is a real cost that's accrued in each year. It's just that we're catching up on paying for it, so we're paying for this on a current basis.
But the monies that are set aside or will be receiving for pensions retirement, does that stay with the town until a pension vests?
No, we on the pension side of things, different from the OPEB or the health retiree health benefits. The pension side is an assessment by Norfolk County. The pension system, they assess the town and all the other member towns in the Norfolk County pension system. But it's a real assessment. It's annual, and right now it's approximately 20% of salary.
From day one, it's pay as you go.
We have an annual assessment, but it's an assessment based on your salary that you're paying out, and it's a real number, and it's 20% of what you're paying in salary.
Is there a vesting schedule
For
for a police officer?
it's the same as the state pension system. This one just happens to be managed by Norfolk County. There are about 105 different pension systems in the state.
Oh, I didn't know if a police officer has to be employed for 5-7 years to be.
Yeah, I believe it's 10-year vesting,
10-year vesting,
which is
okay.
consistent with the entire state
Okay.
schedule.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
So just a general, so if you add up all the salary expense, retirement insurance, and OPEB, 73 or 74, that number each year is going to fluctuate up or down, maybe?
Right, and this is, given that this is the first year of implementation for hiring this additional officer, this is partial funding in our fiscal year. which has already been, paid to us under the agreement. But the annual funding was estimated at a higher number, about $127,000 and change. And yes, based on the actuals that we incur once the chief hires this individual, that will be the amount that will be shared back through the appropriate channels to the craft organization as per the agreement. To then fund.
So that's tracked it's almost like a separate anomaly from the budget. It's going to have to be tracked separately every year?
Yep, it's in essence, it's a local receipt. That's what this mitigation money is, just like some other mitigation money we receive. So it's a local receipt, comes into the general treasury, and that means you can appropriate it, at a town meeting. So the funding is already here. We just need to go to town meeting to appropriate it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for either Chief or Randy? All set? Thank you.
Thank you.
So, next item, or next person, we have Sharon. Sharon, do you want to come forward? We can talk about Articles 6, 7, and 8, and just a quick update on the sign bylaw.
Thank you. Article 6, I believe, amends the definition of accessory apartment, and it addresses a number of issues that the planning board has had over the past 2 years. People have applied to build accessory apartments in buildings that don't exist, and the previous definition only referenced the special permit accessory apartments. If you're in an R15 district, you only need a building permit from Mr. Casbera. So we wanted to correct the definition and make it clear that it has to be in a house which exists, and it has to be in a single-family detached house, not a single-family attached house. So those are the reasons that that article is being rewritten and corrected.
Any questions on that?
How does somebody apply for an accessory apartment for a building that doesn't exist? So the building...
That's the whole point, yeah.
But they actually applied for that, or is
They did.
But physically, so they would build an accessory apartment new?
Well,
but to
isn't
be-
that a duplex? I don't know.
Could be.
It could be. So the whole question was that the practice and the way Mr. Casbera always interpreted the bylaw was it had to be an existing home. But we never explicitly said
Oh, I see, okay.
existing home.
Gotcha.
So theoretically, they could have put an apartment in a detached garage?
Not under the Foxborough bylaw. It must be part of the same house and maintain the single-family appearance.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks. Article 7.
Article 7, when we did our, what we like to call the omnibus downtown article last year, I neglected to add the Foxborough Center Overlay District map to Section 2.2 of the zoning bylaw. This lists it as a zoning district in the town. And further, the map that was submitted as part of the warrant didn't make it into the warrant, so we're attaching it again to the zoning bylaws. The map is unchanged from May 23rd, 2013.
Questions? All set? All right,
Straightforward.
great. Article 8.
Article 8 changes the definition of the height of building. We presently measure from, depending on what we would call in the popular world, a daylight basement counts as a full story, whereas a cellar with only the little basement windows doesn't count as a full story. So based on whether your basement is a story of your home or not, the height of your home was measured from the lowest floor to a point halfway between the eaves and the top of the roof. It's very contrary to the way the state building code defines it. And we chose to amend it so it complies with the state building code, measuring it from the mean grade along the foundation to the highest point of the building, excluding chimneys and parapets and, TV antennas and whatever else you have up there. And then from the definition of story, we deleted the words including basements. So that is to update our zoning bylaw to comply with the state building code.
Questions or comments?
I just have, when you say the immediate, the ground immediate adjacent to the building to get the average,
Right.
we've worked on projects where you take 2 and do the average, or you do
Right.
every 3 feet to
Right,
avoid
right.
highs and lows. Is that a discussion point with the planning board? Because you could get
You can get
10-foot
radically
difference on
different
that. Yep.
numbers. And we've discussed whether or not we should have diagrams in the zoning bylaw that would make it very clear that you take the mean between the high point of the foundation and the low point. But Mr. Casbera feels that this language, the words mean grade of the ground immediately adjacent to the building, he can interpret that. And he is comfortable with it.
Okay. Thanks.
It's making more complicated bylaw even more complicated, right?
Well, usually when you see the graphics, it's because there's been a dispute and someone,
Right.
if they find a loophole, so they say, well, we're going to do it every 5 feet.
Well, when is a basement and a story and not a story, and when does it count and when
Right.
does it not count? I think this is a lot clearer than the current system.
So I just have a question. So if you look at the side of a house and you have the front, the foundation is here, and then it slopes down and you have a
Walkout basement.
basement, what you're doing is you're taking the mean grade, which would be like the center distance?
Yeah, like 4 feet.
Yeah, okay.
And then, and previously, under the current definition, if you walked out, you would have to count the entire basement, that 8 feet or so towards the height. But then the top was measured as halfway on the point. So it's kind of crazy. Where do you start? Where do you end? Which roof line is controlling? So this makes it very clear, in my mind.
Thank you.
Signed by law?
Please.
Quick
update.
As all of you know, you were at the AdCom meeting in early September, where the Planning Board, the Board of Selectmen, and the AdCom all met for a presentation on the Billboard Advisory Committee's draft bylaw. You guys appointed the committee last July to deal with the applications for electronic billboards for variances before the Board of Appeals. And we very quickly determined that the problem wasn't as simple as deciding whether or not to have electronic billboards and adding that to the sign code, but the sign code, which had been moved intact in 1995 from the zoning bylaw to the general bylaws, needed substantial updating and cleaning up as well. And Mr. Scollins, Lorraine, Randy Overt from the Board of Appeals, Bill Greeter from the Planning Board, and Bill Casbera and myself were the committee. You were gracious enough to give us a maximum of $20,000 from the Economic Development Fund. We hired a consultant and held multiple meetings, developed a draft, went to the advisory committee, and got a lot of really great feedback. Their one concern was they personally did not like electronic billboards. We felt the time between the AdCom meeting and the town meeting, we would not be able to do sufficient public outreach to see if they were in the minority or they were in the majority of folks in town. So our decision was to withdraw the electronic billboard portion of the article, keep working on the electronic billboard portion, and submit the remainder for the warrant. And that's what all 25 lovely pages is before you this evening.
And then we met last night again to look at the final revisions, made one final
Right. and that's
significant
what-
change.
Right.
And
that's-
we'll have one more meeting to vote that as the final bylaw.
So
So that this bylaw will change again?
there will be additions to it, but what you
co-
have before you is very close to the final version.
The copy
I
that
would
we received
like-
tonight was the updated one from last night.
The updated one
Yeah.
from last night.
So that just changes the
We
definition.
were very
of-
fortunate, we had a number of people from the business community actively and productively attend our meetings. We had a number of citizens as well. It was very nice to get the amount of input that we did from folks across the town. And I think it's a much better document that we heard from so many different people.
Yeah. Bill Caspera has said that he can definitely interpret this more effectively than, like way more effectively than the current bylaw, so it's a great improvement that way. Just so that everybody knows, last night, our focus of the discussion was on freestanding sign definition. So, you know, if you happen to be reading through this, that's really what the last significant change was around.
Roger Hill?
In our packet, there was a letter, property owner on Route 1 concerned about existing signs and diminishing the value of it. Town council has gone through this, or they're in the, at the AdCom, they said they were in the process of it?
Upon the advice of Mr. Caspera, we got special counsel,
Okay,
and they are completing their review. We expect to have it in the next couple of days.
okay,
So
excellent.
I do not have a copy of the letter that you have.
So this can be shared with the special counsel.
Yes,
Okay.
That would be great. I'm sure that
Okay.
that would be helpful.
and they've offered to assist in that process, to identify the concerns that they had.
Excellent.
Mhm.
So I had a conversation with them this morning, so.
Great, thanks, Sharon.
Thanks very much, Sharon.
Thank you.
Okay, Roger. Roger's going to be talking to us about Article number 2.
Good evening again. This is a repeat of an article that we had in the annual town meeting in 2013 that we withdrew. And the reason we withdrew it is we had 3 bids on a design that was done by an outside architect for a modular public works building, and they came in over budget. And I was bound and determined to stick within the budget. So following that annual town meeting, sometime after, I got together with the 3 companies that had submitted successful bids and basically, unsuccessful bids, and basically said, okay, what can we do to make this affordable? And they pointed out a lot of things about the design that had been done that could be changed and save quite a bit of money. And so I went ahead and put this article in the warrant because I believe right now we can do it well within the budget. As you know, the money already exists in the enterprise account, and it's set aside for building improvements. What this article does is it provides a means for the town to reimburse the enterprise for the town's share in the building based on the salaries of the people who will be working in the building. And that's what the article does, fundamentally.
Roger, what changed from the dimensionally? I mean, you're going after a different approach?
Yes, the building that we advertised back a year or so ago was, it had a crawl space under it and a large footprint because it was all on one floor. That floor included non-personnel space, storage, IT room, quite a few other storage spaces. And during the course of testing the soil out there for the building to see how deep we could go, we dug a deep test pit in the wet season of the spring of 2013, and the water table there is 9.5 feet below the surface. So it lends itself to a full basement. rather than a crawl space. And the modular people pointed out that the design of the walls and the footings on the crawl space rendered it to be more expensive than a full basement would have been. So we went ahead and reduced the footprint and moved all of the non-personnel spaces to the basement, and basically put the useful spaces on the floor, and it reduced the footprint by more than a third from what the building was that we advertised. And that reduction in the footprint is a direct benefit to the price. We think this thing can be built pretty easily well within the budget that we have, with furniture, fixtures, and equipment included. So that was the change, John.
Okay. And any bids in yet?
Actually, I have a RFQ done. I'm going out with that in about a week, and I expect to have bids in well before town meeting, because I'm only going to give them 3 weeks to bid it. It's a pretty simple bid. We really explored modulars a year ago before we got, the design, and the modular buildings are well built. They tend to have a useful life of 40 years or greater, as long as you take care of them with maintenance. And we think it's an ideal setup for the area that we're going to put it on.
So this warrant article, does it read not to exceed or anything like that? Or?
No.
Okay.
No.
What if you come in substantially lower than the 600,000?
Well, part of that's going to be for furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Okay.
Because the warrant article does give me the flexibility if you read it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and if we don't spend it all, we don't spend it all. It's that simple.
Randy, can I ask a question about the general fund contribution?
Certainly.
So this is $213,000 over 5 years. Why do you pick a 5-year period?
Sure. This is actually a successful funding model that one of my predecessors had used when the Mill Street property was acquired for about $1.5 million back several years ago. And the tables were a little bit reversed. It was a pretty elegant strategy to invite some funding in from the water enterprise account to pay $300,000 towards that property in the interest of water protection. So the funding from the water enterprise came in over 5 years on a similar declining schedule as is laid out here, and that money was contributed to the debt service. So the approach that we've taken here to determine what the general fund's share of the cost is, as Roger said, based on taking all the salaries by water, sewer, highway being the only general fund salaries, coming up with the percentage that represents is about 35.5%. And that's how we came to the $213,000, and then used a similar methodology to have the general fund pay back the water enterprise over a same 5-year schedule. And what makes that easier is two things. One, as Roger has already stated, the water enterprise already has sufficient funds appropriated from prior town meetings to go towards a project like this, under building improvements, so they can actually pay for it, for it all out of the gate. And then the general fund charges back the enterprise accounts annually, the water enterprise and the sewer enterprise, as is required for two enterprise accounts to charge them the overhead charges that are incurred in other departments. And that number for the water enterprise is north of $500,000. So it would be a credit over 5 years, as indicated in the schedule in the warrant article, on a declining basis, making it easier on the general fund. Big number for this year, 64,000, and then 55, and then declining down to the final number near 5. And the good news as well is that as we were anticipating this project would come forward again, we put forward a revenue budget that had already incorporated this year's share. So there's nothing unanticipated here.
Now, does that salaries model come in pretty close to expected square foot usage? I just thought that's...
Yes.
Wouldn't you just do it by square feet?
Well, the way we set up the general budget for public works is we have highway, tree and park, water, sewer, and some of the administrative salaries are funded from different accounts, a certain amount, like my salary is funded from all three. The town engineer's salary would be funded from all three. The GIS person's salary would be funded from all three. The two clerks in highway are funded out of highway and tree and park. The three clerks in water are funded out of
Water and sewer.
water and sewer enterprise.
Okay.
And so
It's the most convenient model.
it really does fit the square footage use of the building.
Okay. In a perverse way, it makes sense.
And it was all Roger's idea, which is a pretty good one.
Okay.
Any other questions for Roger?
I have a question. This may be premature, but are you going to have space for a facilities department within that building?
Nope.
Yeah, that was, I think they're planning to utilize that out through the school department. About space for that,
The school department?
in the school department.
Any other questions for Roger? Comments? Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
So Article 3 is the town hall plans.
I'll be happy to speak to that. Town Hall Working Group began its work in May of 2014. The purpose of the working group was to look at the various options available for addressing current space and building conditions at the Foxborough Town Hall. Over the course of the past 5 months, the working group has concluded that the best option is to build a new building and to demolish the existing structure. The primary goal for addressing this course of action includes building on the existing town hall site in hopes that the existing town hall offices can remain open during the construction phase. The working group remains committed to exploring all available options to make this goal a reality. By hiring an architect and manager for the project, those who are most familiar with those logistical challenges of this project approach can then advise us on how to proceed with our next steps. The working group does not proclaim to have all the answers on how to address the details of the project at this time. However, our goal was to identify the most preferred options to provide direction to an architect and turn over our list of goals to the team of experts who can try to make this project a reality. The working group acknowledges that there is one member of the group who does not agree with our recommendation and prefers to renovate the existing building as opposed to building new. However, after considering all the positive and negative aspects of building new versus renovations of the existing structure, the vast majority of the members have indicated that the building new will be the most predictable, efficient, and best use of taxpayers' dollars. As town manager, I'm truly appreciative of all the hard work and dedication that the members of the work group have demonstrated throughout the process. I therefore request the board's support in including this article in the special town meeting warrant. And I just wanted to add that right now we're in the process of identifying what the cost will be for this particular warrant article. The effort is we've already submitted an RFP. The working group actually met earlier this evening around 4:30. We concluded our discussions around 6:15, and we're out to bid right now on an RFP to obtain an architect to identify a cost and for the cost of an OPM, an overall project manager. And we will have those numbers before to present the town meeting, so we know exactly what the numbers are. So we're going to present this information to the AdCom as well, so that they're aware that we're still waiting on information. We should have the information by the third week in October. That's our goal at this point in time, based on our schedule. So we'll have all the exact numbers that we hope to present.
That's when the proposals are due, October?
Proposals, they're actually due before that, Jim, but we're gonna make a recommendation to this board to hire the person, obviously subject to town meeting.
Okay, so the article as written is open-ended?
It is open-ended.
There's no not-to-exceed number in there?
Right, the motion will be the motion itself will be to what the actual amount it will be, and we'll present that to you at the time we have it.
Okay.
Okay?
What's AdCom going to chew on?
Well, we don't know, and they won't know until we do have that information. I think what's important for the AdCom to understand is how we got to this point in recommending what we've done in the process that we've utilized up to this point. So I think it's important for them to hear that background information. And we hope to be before them, next week, Randy?
Tomorrow night,
hopefully.
planning to ask the chair if we could get on the following week agenda.
Right. Try and get before them as soon as possible so they can ask as many questions as possible before we get to that point.
Okay, so AdCom's going to work on the general scope of it. And then they'll get a number at hopefully soon.
Yes, that's right. This is just more or less the enabling article to allow us to do the appropriation, but our goal would be to ask that the money be transferred from available funds, and that we believe we have the money in, based upon the recommendation of the finance director, that we have money available in our free cash amount to do that.
So the way that it's an RFP for
Yes.
architect and OPM,
Yes.
you expect,
They're two separate RFPs.
one for the OPM, one?
Right.
Okay, so are you expecting back qualifications or price or both?
Both.
In separate, so you don't have to so you negotiate with the architect under qualifications, and then you negotiate a price,
Yes.
so you've
We'll
got to
pick
go...
we'll pick the architect based on qualifications, interviews, et cetera, go through that process, and then identify the price.
And then
follow that.
negotiate all before town meeting to
Before
get the
town
price?
meeting. Right.
Yeah, I'll go over the schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Euchner has used the same process in the past. It's worked very, very well for him.
Okay.
So this is one of the few times that we've actually enacted this type of process where we have clear numbers to present to people before they are going to act on it at a town meeting. The same thing will be true. Our plan is to do the same thing for the actual construction cost. And we'll actually have those numbers available for a special town meeting, we hope by September of next year. So that's our plan. Okay. It's been a good process so far. We actually had another good meeting tonight. And we're starting to gain some momentum here. Our process is now to educate everyone on the process and what we've done and how we've reached the conclusions that we have. And it's important for the board to know that while it was the direction of this board to build a new project, we didn't outright dismiss the renovation option until we were comfortable that that was not an option that we wanted to pursue. We wanted to make sure we looked at a lot of different aspects before we could be able to stand up and say that we chose this reason, this choice, this direction, because.
So you've resolved that renovation is unrealistic?
And based on the majority of our members, yes. In our
Okay.
own minds, we've reached that conclusion. I think David will update you later on tonight where we're at.
Great.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is Article 5. This is the legislature petition in regards to requesting additional liquor licenses to be used by the town. And, I bring this forward for discussion really as a starting point. We are at a point now where we have sewer and we have the fire station and the Keating properties as being in a good position now to start that process of teeing them up for sale, along with a couple of other properties. And so, based on the feedback from the last meeting, concern about how are we going to figure out how many to apply for, what I did was I've requested, and we've posted a meeting for this Thursday night with the planning board so that we can get input from the planning board in terms of master plan thoughts, any other thoughts that they have in terms of the ability to use liquor licenses in certain areas for restaurants related to, continued development in the town. So my thought was after the meeting on Thursday, then I can come back with some additional information, any suggestions from them, and then we can have a more full discussion on the topic at our next meeting. And then, the board can determine what numbers they want, if they want this or not. Just wanted to make sure I had some additional information for everybody before we went any further, and I thought the planning board was the best place to start.
Could we invite the planning board to also attend that meeting? The
Yes.
selectmen's meeting?
What's that, Jenny?
Could we ask the planning board to also attend the selectmen's meeting, just in case we have questions in regard to like the master plan and?
Oh, at our next meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I've also received some additional information from a business owner on Route 1 as well that's indicated that they have some interest in this issue. So I think it's, now that it's out there, I think it's important that we get as much feedback as possible.
Mhm.
And also maybe the establishments that hold liquor licenses, because they've invested in Also, if you get 10 more, what does that do to their investment and their
Mhm.
expansion, more competition? Because
Right.
I think it's a fair discussion to have.
Yep.
Yeah, one of our topics last meeting was that we believe there's a correlation between availability of liquor licenses and development, such as, Foxfield Plaza in the center of town, et cetera. So,
Right.
if more licenses came into town, surely they would diminish the value of current owners.
Yeah.
But-
It brings in
but-
businesses, but
you
there's
know,
also challenges.
But our interest is in, and our vision is to develop these commercial zones. So,
Nodes of development.
I understand, but, obviously, there's a finite amount of business, and if we're going to develop certain areas, that's the licenses.
Oh, yeah, I'm in full agreement. I'm saying when we're looking for that special number, was it 10, 25, or none at all? The establishments that are here, that have been here for a very long time, will be affected, because you're going to have a restaurant building next to another restaurant. So when we're reaching out, I think we
Yeah, and
need to do
actually,
it from both sides, that's all.
And there's been restaurateurs in town with beer and liquor licenses that are raising their hand.
Yeah,
And,
that they'd like to go to the next
and
level.
we have
Yeah.
certain, they've been very loyal to the town, and we should look at helping them out as well.
And, there's something to be said, too, about the fact that from an economic development perspective, that, having restaurants compete against each other is not a bad thing, because it brings more people to the area. So it becomes more of an area of attraction in many ways. So business begets business. That's usually how it works. So.
Yeah, it also provides choice for people. Not everybody,
Exactly.
there's, some people have their certain favorite restaurants that they go out of town to patronize, when it would be nice maybe if one of them was in town.
There's the
We need a restaurant
local
downtown
flavor.
called
so to
Developers.
speak. Yeah.
I don't think so.
No.
All right, so,
So we're going to wait to get feedback from the
yeah,
planning.
we'll get feedback and report back at the next meeting.
Oh,
Steve, come on up. Yep, please do.
Thank you. Steve Uden, 21 Carmine Ave. I'm just representing myself. My concern with the liquor licenses is, and this is not a moral lecture to the Board of Selectmen, but is the excessiveness of the liquor licenses that we already have in the community. And that in this discussion, I haven't heard once the correlation of the increase in safety issues, i.e. more Russian roulette to play on the roads while I have a daughter just ready to start driving, and an aging community whose driving may not improve or may improve, but it will certainly be affected by other aspects of more pouring liquor licenses here in town. And so I just ask respectfully the Board of Selectmen to keep in mind that the responsibility for these licenses and the safety of our community is on how many of these, if any, we request, because I don't believe we need to have an inventory on them, and I don't believe that liquor licenses are the only method that this town has to generate income. In fact, I think it's a very narrow way to look at how we can generate income when we have such a breadth of different talent on the board to entice business to our community. So I say thank you very much, and I'll step down now. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Any other comments? Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda then is the release of subdivision funding. Sharon Wasson and Chris Gallagher.
Just going back to the warrant, is there anything else you want to do with the warrant at this point?
Oh, actually, no, we need to close it, right?
It's officially closed now. Is that
No,
correct?
it's officially open right now.
Still
It's open right now,
Okay.
so we need to close
So
it.
you need to close it, vote to close it, and then if there's any further information the board needs with respect to any specific article, please let me know so I can, you don't have to tell me tonight if you don't want to. If you think about it, feel free to send me an email. I'll be happy to follow up on it. Okay?
Now, if we close it, can changes be made to specific warrant articles? For instance, the sign bylaw is going to have a change coming at us.
You'll remember, of course, we often send the warrant to town council, and there's changes made.
That's amendment.
Okay, so that process can happen while the warrant is
Right.
closed?
Yes.
That's right.
Okay,
These are the only articles that are going to be included in the warrant.
right, okay.
So what happens, we still go through our review process, and we can make changes to the language, obviously, provided that the article itself stays in the same direction that it's going.
And have any of these articles gone through the advisory committee? They're just starting now, correct?
Starting that process.
Just starting now.
Okay,
They're literally starting tomorrow night, I believe, right?
okay.
So can I have a
You need-
motion,
you need a
please,
motion,
to close the warrant for the town meeting?
Okay, I'll reverse my previous motion. I'll make a motion to close the warrant at 8:10 on Tuesday night, what's today's date?
23rd.
23rd.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sharon? Aye.
I'm very pleased to have the honor of introducing Chris Gallagher to the board. Chris is our new town engineer, and the first reason that the town of Westwood is unhappy with Foxborough, because he also came from the
They
town of
actually know
Westwood.
each other, that's pretty scary.
So, he lives here in town, and he was pleased to be able to have a shorter commute as well as to give back to his hometown. And we've been very fortunate. We've worked closely with him on the planning board on a number of projects. So we're here today. Last May, at the annual town meeting, the town adopted a portion of the subdivision control law, which defaulted subdivision bonds the planning board has called or taken the money from. The process would be that the money would come into the town and then be reappropriated through town meeting, unless it's under $100,000 and the selectmen approve it. So we're here tonight for the first request to expend defaulted subdivision monies, which are already in agency accounts of the town, to complete the required improvements that they were pledged for. And Chris will go into a lot more into the specifics if you have questions.
If the board wants, I can just go over the estimates that I've put together and
That'd be great.
kind of the process from here.
Thank you.
You know, there are two subdivisions, Foxwoods and Pleasant View. Foxwoods has some more substantial work to be done.
What's the name of the street?
Carlton Street, which is down off of 106. So down there, that road's been in place for, I believe, 8 years now. There's some substantial cracking in the road, the existing asphalt, that'll all need to be crack sealed. We'll have to do the top course of asphalt. Some of the granite curbing that's been damaged over the years will need to be pulled out and reset. Sidewalks need to be done on one side of the street, and then all the street trees also need to be planted down there as well. On top of that, we'll also have an engineering company come in, set all the bounds that are required by planning board that have been approved and are on the plan, and then do a final as-built and street acceptance plans. So that, roughly $65,000 to complete Carlton Street. The other road is Clarendon, which is off of Pleasant Street. Shorter road, not in as bad a shape. There's no sidewalks on that street.
Right.
There's only 3 houses in the subdivision, and really all we have to do there is crack seal the existing asphalt and pave the top course of asphalt, and then there's some minor work to be done. The guardrail at the end of the street needs to be repaired, and the detention basin over there needs some attention as well, to bring it back to its designed features. And that one's, at this point in time, we have $15,500 budgeted for that.
Chris was planning to make use of Surge, the Southeast Regional
Services group.
Services Group, yeah.
So that group does a lot of the bidding for our construction services, so our paving, sidewalk installation. A lot of that work, the town doesn't bid on our own. We do it as part of a regional group. We get better rates by doing that. And I've already been in touch with the contractors, giving them a heads up that we want to get this work done before the end of the construction season. You know, the more we can do now and get it wrapped up, the better off we are come springtime when, you know, the planning board brings these streets to be accepted by the town.
What happens to the balances in these funds, Sharon?
This is just the first start. There needs to be signage and a number of other loam and seed and grass seed and
Okay.
all sorts of things. But we felt the most critical was get the roads in good shape, so they were safe for traffic. They're only base coats. One of them's literally falling apart. So they require a lot of attention sooner rather than later.
But if there is unspent money,
It
that
is
just-
to be returned with any accrued interest to the person who posted the bond.
okay, it doesn't flow into our general fund or anything?
No.
Okay.
So if the damage is as bad as you say, and you're gonna crack seal and then overlay,
Right.
what's gonna prevent the cracking from telegraphing through?
Telegraphing.
You know, it's a pretty standard procedure, you know, to crack seal and then overlay a road. We do it with, you know, many of our existing
It's a
roadways that
minimum of
have.
an inch and a half, too.
Yeah, so,
It's the top layer, the pavement's put in 2 layers, as you know, Dave.
yeah.
And this is the inch and a half top coat, not a thin veneer, but a,
And I've actually budgeted for more than an inch and a half. We're gonna go, because of the condition of the existing asphalt, we're gonna crack seal it. And instead of that inch and a half, we're gonna go with a full 2 inches above that.
How long has the binder been down?
I
8
think
years.
6 to 8 years between the two. It's unfortunate, you know, if we had more money, it would all come out and go down new. But we're working with some constraints on the budget.
So in effect, these are contractors that did subdivision, they posted a bond, they were to finish the work, and they just never finished it.
They never
and then
finished it.
You've exhausted it, they've walked away, and they're
right.
not going to
And
finish
then
it.
we obtained the money from the banks with a lot of assistance of Randy. It was onerous, to say the least.
Yeah, okay.
So we have money from a third subdivision, Autumn Estates, over off of Chestnut Sullivan Way.
Yep.
And so Chris and Gabby are working on that project as well. But these are the first 2. We're asking for your permission to get the work done.
Mhm. And this is just to bring it up to
What was
this
required
design.
for the
So when I see
plan.
something like 21 street trees, those were street trees
Those
that
are
the
the
planning
street
board
trees
approved,
that
but were never installed?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
And some of these items will work since the residents have been there for 8 years.
Sure.
They have existing landscaping. You know, I've budgeted for what was designed. Some of those street trees may not need to go in, or we may be able to relocate them into different areas within that subdivision.
I'm sure the neighbors are ecstatic that this is going to be finished
They're
soon.
very happy that the end is in sight.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Will you vote to let us spend the money?
All right, so can I have a motion to approve this?
Oh, okay. I move to approve the, what are we approving?
The expenditure.
The expenditure of the escrow money held for Foxwoods and Pleasant View in order to finish the road to be up to par to the town specifications. Is that okay?
Second that.
Any discussion?
And just, so in the future, you're leaving $10,000 on the table because it's not done. Do they need to come back to us
Yeah,
again?
we'll need to come back to you.
But that's not a small enough that you have no discretion over even that small amount. Not that it's a small amount, but you have to come back to us for that
Right.
amount? Okay.
We need your permission.
Yeah, previously they had to go to
They
town
had to go
meeting.
to town.
Yeah, but I
Previous-
thought there was a $10,000.
Nope.
At the beginning, I thought you had said something about
No,
if it's under a certain limit,
if it's under 100,000,
you have to
we
come
come
in front
to
of
you
us.
guys instead of town meeting.
And then at over 100,000 is town
Over
meeting.
100,000, we still need to go to town
Okay. I
meeting.
misunderstood. Okay, thank you.
That's okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
We
Nice to meet
really
you. Good luck.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the Town Council RFP. At our last meeting, we had voted to go out to RFP, and everyone was provided with a copy of the document to review. If you have any questions or additions or changes you want to make in the document?
These minutes that were given to us were just for our information?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd been thinking about this, but, you know, I thought maybe to make it more expedient, I wouldn't bring it up, but then I talked to Sandra, and she actually thought this was a good idea. So I had a few concerns about the, under the background on Foxborough page, the first page. I just had some suggestions, and I may make it easier for everybody. So you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Just to, in the first paragraph, and I put it in red just to delete that because that's a duplication of the information in paragraph 4. And in paragraph 4, I just wanted to add that paragraph 4 starts out Foxborough's home, Gillette Stadium, you know, blah, blah. And then I just wanted to add that Foxborough is also home to Schneider Electric, an international company, the future home of Meditech, and a business park, as well as 3 additional commercial plazas, numerous small businesses, and professional offices. In July of 2014, the town entered into an agreement with Mansfield and Norton to expand sewer in the downtown area as well as other areas in town to enhance future commercial development. I just wanted to put that in just to expand the commercial aspects of the town. So that was the only thing that, you know, I would like to see changed. Other than that, I was fine.
I think it's a great addition, Ginny. Just gives a broader picture of the town. Any other comments on?
Yeah, I think that's fine. We beef up, you know, who Foxborough is, but there's I think somewhere in his requirement that the attorney has to be within 50 miles. So, you know, any attorney worth their weight is going to do their own research. They know about Foxborough. I mean, I know last time we spent out volumes of colored pictures of what Foxborough and this, you know, Union Straw Hut. So that stuff is a little less important because I think the attorneys know where Foxborough are and home of the stadium. And I'm not bringing this up to go back and revote, but again, in the RFP, we say the duration is 3 years, okay? And somewhere else in it, it says, you know, we're hoping for a long-term relationship. Again, this goes back to a little of the communication. This topic was voted at the last meeting with no backup for existing contracts, existing agreements. A town manager, one of the members had asked what the agreement was. We had no opportunity to talk to other board members or even to go back 2 years and look at the discussion that happened when we went out for an RFP. Now, at that time, there was no rhyme and reason. Whoever was on the board or whatever happened would uncomfortably say, we need a new town council for whatever reason, and then we'd discuss it. At that time, back in July and leading up to July of 2012, the discussion was, let's not let that happen again. Let's revisit this on scheduled intervals every 3 or 4 years. That's what was in the RFP. It said 3 years. The letter that was signed on behalf of the town said 3 years. And within 15 minutes, we just put all that out the window and said, for whatever reason, we're not happy with this town council, even though, and for the reasons that he lacked the depth or he was too conciliatory. But those are the exact reasons that we hired him in the first place, specifically, and those was what was discussed. So if we're going to go again and say we're going to look for a long-term relationship and it's going to be every 3 years, what do we say next year when we re-vote it again? Because we took a formal vote, even before we signed Gellerman on. Linda Walsh made the motion and it specifically said, we're going to hire this attorney for 3 years. And it was a unanimous vote. And 2 years later, we're re-voting it, and no one bothered to pick up the old agreement. No one bothered to have that discussion, but within 5 minutes, we raised our hand, and now we're gonna go through this whole process while we have a sitting attorney saying, thanks, what did I do wrong? And now we're starting to get letters filtered in from other boards saying, oh, I'm not happy with him, or, so now maybe someone's gotta find a board that they are happy with.
Bill, can I ask a point of clarification?
Yeah, you said-
This language, I'm sure it wasn't written from scratch. Was this language the same language that was used for the last RFP?
yes.
Okay, now I just want to read this.
Yep.
It says here in Section 8, the duration of the agreement shall be at the sole discretion of the Board of Selectmen, but is expected to be 3 years. That to me says that the Board of Selectmen can deal with this at any time they want.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
So, but that's the language that Gilliman
Correct,
responded to.
correct.
Okay.
And then leading up to it,
But
the
we-
specific discussion that the board had was for 3 years, and that was the specific motion. And granted,
I thought we determined last week that there wasn't a contract. Didn't we determine
No.
that?
Well,
there was a-
well,
there was
I
a-
actually went back and I looked
Yep.
for the letter, and I do have the letter, and the letter.
Oh, yeah.
So I just want to be clear about that. It does say in the letter directly that we acknowledge that the duration of this agreement is at the sole discretion of the board. However, it is at the stated in the RFP, the mutual expectation of the parties that our appointment will be for a minimum of 3 years, three consecutive one-year terms.
Correct. Understood.
Okay.
So,
Before we sign that, the five-member board said, because of this process, so we don't have to do this every year when a selectman is not happy or there's an issue.
Mhm.
The board specifically said, we are going to hold this for 3 years. All those in favor said aye. It was a 5-0 vote. How does that happen, and then we re-vote without even discussing?
Well, Jim,
But,
let me
it would
ask
have been nice to have this letter in front of us. It would have been nice to, the old RFP. And now, we're going through this whole process based on, some of it's hearsay, some of it's bad feeling, some, for whatever. And he may be the best attorney or the worst attorney, but what are we gonna say next year when someone wants to visit this again? All those in favor? Or are we gonna say, look, we've got a lot of stuff going on in the town, there's a certain benefit to have some longevity and some institutional knowledge. Maybe it's a good time to change, maybe we're in the middle of stuff, we've got town hall, we've got billboards, all that stuff. A little bit more than a 5-minute discussion that's so important, that is, we have legal counsel for liquor, for labor, and Water and Sewer just said they weren't happy with them, so they went out and got their own counsel, which is fine. He never proclaimed to be a counsel that did everything. But unless it's broken, why do we want to go back and go through this RFP process when we all collectively decided 3 years was a good time? I'll go through it.
But Jim, let me ask you a question. So you're saying that a prior board can bind a future board with its decisions?
No, they don't bind it, but at least have the ability to have that word carry on for a discussion at the next vote. So, next year, there may be different votes, but whoever's going to vote it, I would hope, look back and say, well, how did we get to this point? 3 years ago, we had an attorney that was litigious. We had a difficult time with certain things, so we changed it to get something that was a little more, work for solutions. So 3 years ago, maybe some of you weren't here, but that's the reason that we made these changes. And this is the process that we did. So next year, history is a good thing to learn from. And if we don't have that discussion, next week I'll put something on the agenda that says something and surprise everybody. That's not what this is about. All the item said last time was town council RFP. Didn't say we're going to vote on it. It didn't say, we're unhappy. There was nothing other than town council RFP. And when a town manager says, and I look at the minutes that were just given to us, you didn't know any of the details. Some of the questions that you asked, you didn't know when he was, I had to say, well, he was hired in July of 2002, this was it. No information and no discussion, and now we're gonna go in through a long process that it would have been appreciated to
No,
have
but
a little more discussion.
I knew
on
the
it.
timing and the circumstances by which he was rehired. I certainly knew that.
Looking at the meeting minutes, that's not what came up from last time. And we had David that wasn't even on the board. We had 3 sitting members that 2 years ago voted unanimously to keep him. 2 new members and a brand-new town manager. So I would have appreciated a little bit more of a heads up and a little bit more of a dialogue before we turn everything upside down and go out and, it's nice, this is a great packet that says what Foxborough is about, but are we going to be doing this every year now? That's what we were trying to avoid.
Well, that's one of my concerns, because in the RFP, we're asking town council to render advice and opinions. And all of a sudden, someone doesn't like that advice or that opinion. Does that warrant going out for another RFP in a year, 2 years from now, just because we didn't like the advice or opinion?
Well, Bill, I think you were describing in your experience every year it's a
Right,
it's a 1 year
it's an annual reappointment.
reappointment.
It's an annual appointment, so at any time, the board can actually
It's
go
a
out.
discussion,
Right.
but you don't send out an RFP every year.
Not necessarily, no.
And
no,
the town council that you have has
The only
been
time,
there
the
for a
only time
while.
that does happen is
Yeah.
if the board desires to go out to RFP. So you can do an annual reappointment every year. And if, unless the board says, something, we want to go out and take a look, that's fine, that's within your prerogative to do that.
And I don't disagree. I think everyone are here for different reasons and elected and have a different, sometimes we're the same, sometimes we're different. But I don't know how much we spent on Gellerman. I know he's $140 an hour. What was our budget last year? What was it this year? We have a collective budget of $180,000 for all of them. How was that 3 years ago? Those are the items that I think we owed it to this town to look at before we make a decision. And that meeting last time was all of 10 minutes. And it was mostly me speaking, saying, what the heck's happening here? So be it. It's a 4-to-1 vote. We move on.
I think it
But-
was
3-2.
3-2 vote. Sorry, Dave, I forgot about you.
Thanks.
But you know what? So next year, we'll do the same thing, and we'll have the attorney, that's one thing that we should have a little bit of consistency with so much, with a brand-new town manager, someone that has some institutional knowledge over the last 2 years, and unless he did something egregiously wrong, why not honor the handshake that we had with him from the very beginning? And I'm sorry that all his decisions doesn't make everybody happy. There's a bunch of other boards out there. Some, I tell you, are very happy with them. Others might not be. But how do we make this decision without that discussion and saying, well, I heard from another board that he wasn't happy? It just, I think we can do better than that. And so granted, we'll go through this RFP, we'll bring, 3 more, 5 more contestants in, and we'll start the whole process over. And then we'll do it again next year, and then we'll do it again the next year. It doesn't make any sense unless it's broken. And I haven't heard anyone on this board say it's broken, other than they were unhappy with something. But why put us through that, and why put the town through that for something I think is needless?
Broken perhaps isn't the word. We can do better. I think that's what we're after. We can improve.
There's a lot of self-improvement for everybody. We can do a heck of a lot worse, too.
Of course.
So.
Yeah. Well, I think, we did vote to go out through this process. I hear what you're saying about you're not satisfied with the extent of the discussion, but I think that each one of us has done our due diligence to come up to that conclusion, so, I think, again, I'm just looking for comments on the content of the RFP. If there are no other comments, I just
So my
ask.
comment was, what are we going to do about the 3 years? Are we going to leave it 3 years?
Well, I have this underlined. I just want to ask you, if you look at Section 8, duration of the agreement. It reads, "The duration of the agreement shall be at the sole discretion of the Board of Selectmen, but is expected to be 3 years. Each firm/individual submitting a proposal is requested to detail its fee proposal on a 1-year basis." So, should there be any insert here regarding, like, this will be an annual reappointment process?
It's up to the board. I mean, this is your discretion here. You can word this any way you want. The way the way I've seen it is that it is an annual appointment. I think the purpose of the 3 years is no different than really, I think, insurance coverage in many ways, that you typically wouldn't go out every year. And I don't see town councils change every year typically.
No.
So I guess there's sort of an expectation and sort of an understanding that that's the way it'll work. I just one point to back up on the conversation that was just had is that we've just gone past the 2-year mark, on this process, so for that appointment. So to actually start the process of investigating another option is a little bit early, but not a whole lot early in that respect. So it's actually in line with the year that you would typically look for a new person if there was desire of the board to do so. So, if you want to have further input, you can still do that. You're within that line of thinking. But if you want to proceed now, you can proceed now.
So,
No.
you're right, so the 2 years was July, August, so now it's
Right.
September, October, so before you know it, the time this goes out, it may be 2
Right.
years, who knows?
Right, it's been 2
But
years.
in order to go out to RFP, wouldn't it be beneficial to say, here's the billings, here's the expectations, here's the positives, and here's the negatives? We went through a lot of difficult times, and I'll say it, Splitsville was all over the place, okay? There was winners and losers at this table, and the public, on the attorneys, the casino item, all that stuff. How is planning board handling the council? Are they getting served well? How is conservation? How is all these other issues? Wouldn't it be nice to have that dialogue to say we're happy or we're not happy, and these are the reasons why? So if we find out we're not happy because of A, B, C, and D, that gives us a benefit when we're looking at the new council saying, boy, here's apples to apples. We just all collectively decided we don't want this type of attorney.
Mhm.
But now we're going to send out an RFP. We're going to get a whole bunch of nice suits and nice presentations and nice graphics. And I don't know what people didn't like about them, other than, what was said at this table very briefly. And I don't think that's fair to council, and I don't think it's fair to the whole other boards in the town that have ongoing issues right now, or items that he's involved with. Or, he's there. We haven't fired him. He's still there, but he's going to be working through this process. Did anyone reach out to him to say this is coming? I don't know. So it just...
I did tell him,
Yeah.
based upon the...
And I had a 2-hour conversation with him back in February.
Yeah, it was very respectful.
I've had conversations with him before this.
It was very respectful. I mean, it was an indication that the board had taken a step to start the process. And so I just wanted to give him a heads up that was happening.
So the reasons that were stated at the table, if that's the majority of the board, then we eliminate the firms that are small, that don't have, so we go back to the big firms. So this RFP should reflect that, right? Only big firms apply.
Or multidimensional firms, ones that are not limited to small.
Yeah, but that's not in this
Scope.
RFP at all, I
Okay.
didn't see.
That's a fair point,
So,
if that's a desire. That's a fair
Yeah, I
point.
think you're right, we're looking for breadth and depth.
Mhm.
And if we were to add that would, it would limit the field, but I think it's a good thing to limit.
So, just under this one section, then, duration of agreement, we'll let this stand because that is the expectation, but again, with the language at the sole discretion of the board, so that...
I think the language is reasonable
It
language.
is,
It's
yeah.
just, I think there's sort of an understanding that that's what people will do, but if the board decides, if the board changes, that dynamic can always change again.
Right.
so why put 3?
Well, if you want to take
Yeah.
it out, take it out.
That's my, it's embarrassing to keep it in after going through this when we specifically said 3 years, and 2 years later for no big reason. Let's just take it out.
No, I think what's important is the sole discretion of the selectmen.
That's
The board
fine,
of
so leave that
select-
part in.
Yeah, leave it in. And I know, I for one, had I had very good reasons for deciding to go out for an RFP.
See, I don't know that, because when we got to that meeting, there was no discussion,
Well,
and there wasn't even knowing that we were going to vote on it. So if you had reasons, that would have been something that we could talk about.
I'll give you a
you
good
know?
example, and I will try to keep this as simple as possible. When we were going over the supposedly final documents of the Splitsville, we got those documents at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were expected to, okay them. What we spent was 2 hours going through those documents, and some people called that nitpicking. I called that due diligence. And what we found in that 2-hour discussion, looking over that document, what we found was language that was not language that the Board of Selectmen had expected to be in there. And the examples are, in the Splitsville discussions, we went back and forth on things. There were things that were agreed to.
Mhm.
Two of them, one was the community policing plan, and one was the funding for the policemen to be hired for the town. The policeman that Ed O'Leary spoke about tonight. That was the negotiations that we had. It was a separate item negotiated. The community policing plan was a separate item negotiated. The language in that final document linked the community policing plan with the policeman for the town. That was not what was negotiated. And it wasn't until we went back and forth at the table for 2 hours, and we finally got that language straightened out, so that Ed O'Leary could come to us tonight, so that we would get as mitigation in perpetuity that policeman. That was my concern. That language, the language that we had negotiated, the negotiations we had done, were not reflected in that document. And that was my concern, and I do not want to see that happen again.
So that surprises me, because I was heavily involved in that whole process, and this is the first time that I'm hearing that it's risen. I looked at a council that, to be honest with you, kept the stuff together and kept us out of a lawsuit to get us to that point, and I think we got everything that we wanted from the table.
Wait a minute, at what cost? The language that was in there meant down the road. Went down the road, there was a loophole in there that down the road, if the community policing plan was decided it wasn't working out, then that could be stopped. And because the policeman, the full-time policeman, was linked to that, it meant that they were no longer obligated to pay the town for a policeman. That linkage was not what was negotiated by us. That linkage was inserted in that final document, and we had to look at it. And in my mind, we were not served very well by town council's office. And I say that not as a person that didn't like decisions or had a problem. I say that as a member of the Board of Selectmen who's looking out for the town of Foxborough, not only today, but also tomorrow, down the road.
Well, I hope everyone at this table shares that same goal, to look out for the town down the road. I remember it differently. I remember at that point, the council that we had was responsible for putting a lot of angry people together and keeping it going, that we would probably be embroiled in lawsuits right now. So that I'm looking at the bigger picture, that to get to that detail was not possible if we had counsel that did this, and we sued everybody.
Okay, putting it together, at what cost? At what cost down the road, there was a loophole that could have been used?
I think
what cost?
The process of us reviewing the documents with town council, I think it worked, because that item came up, it was picked up, we worked through it.
Can I?
I'm not a professional. We are not professionals. We depend on the advice and counsel of town council. And it is our expectation that when we have a legal document before us, it is a legal document that we negotiated, and it was to the benefit of the town of Foxborough, and not the other party down the road.
See, I don't have that in front of us.
Well, we were here.
I disagree.
We were here.
Jenny, I'm happy to say I believe what you say you believe. I see it differently. I remember it differently. I look at the big picture of everything. If that was a detail that upset you, but it was brought up and caught, so be it.
It was a very big detail. It's a very big detail. And we were criticized for nitpicking for 2 hours. But if we hadn't been reviewing that would not have been in there. And down the road, we would conceivably, maybe, lost the policeman that right now we have in perpetuity. The cost of the policeman.
What you're saying would have been nice to hear in closed session when we were negotiating, rather than 6 months later, after the fact, in public right now.
That was part of negotiations.
Okay, thank you both for,
But, I mean, this is my
comments,
point.
yeah.
These are the discussions that we, and maybe not to this level, but a 5-minute, all those in favor of a new town council, without these discussions, I don't know how we do it. I don't know how we're going down that
but I
direction right
think
now.
you can see, Jim, that each person at the table has their own opinion on this and their own reasons. I think Ginny has just shared one of her reasons. And my hope was that we would not go any further down this path of discussing these reasons, because it's clear that the majority have reasons for wanting to go out for RFP. So I'd like to get back to the topic, which is just, if we can just ask Bill to look at the issue of the individual versus the large group, to make sure that that's clear in here, that it would, individuals with their own affiliations to be spelled out clearly.
Well, the one point of reference, one point of information I think you all should think about, though, is that if you want to go out to bid and and there is still a possibility that the current council could be reappointed,
Yes.
you would effectively be eliminating him from consideration here by doing that. So I'm not sure you want to do that if that's if you want to go, if it's a desire of the board to look at a group that's more diverse, that's fine. You can still see those and compare them to your current council. But if you put language in there that's restrictive, you don't want to. I don't think you want to exclude him from the process if that's unless you do. But I wouldn't recommend you do that.
I don't want to.
No, that's a good point, Bill.
That's a
We're
good
asking
point, yeah.
for different firms to come in and interview, but he's still on,
Right.
he's still our counsel.
Yeah, exactly
So
right.
If we ask
Exactly right.
for whatever, it doesn't make a difference. He's still representing us.
The one point I'll just make in response to your comment, Jim, was that the way I understood this conversation was that the board is looking to go to RFP to evaluate what's out there. Then you have a decision to make at that point, whether you want to retain your existing council or go to a new one. So the decision at this point is not to actually appoint a new town council.
Correct.
It's
yeah.
to go out to RFP and evaluate the market and determine if that's the direction you want to go.
Thank you.
But I guess I was misunderstood. So it sounds like it's not an issue that the council's too small. It's
Well, no,
you either made a
I've
mistake
heard
or-
that.
or-
I've heard that comment. I personally have heard that comment that the breadth of experience in certain areas is not there because it's a smaller firm. And that's understood. It's just the reality of the situation.
But I'm saying from this table, it doesn't sound like that's what the issue is. It's a different
No,
issue.
I also think, I
also
also think it needs more depth. I'm not just a one-issue person.
Well,
I
I don't know
have-
that, Jim.
I
I
have,
don't know that he doesn't have enough depth for this table, because when we need it, we pull in other councils, and
Okay.
if it's depth and issues, so be it. But I have no way of knowing unless this is talked about, and you're saying other boards have depth issues with them, fine.
I've heard that,
But-
yes.
But could we not have had that discussion before we got to this point? Other than we just want a new one because that's what we want, all those in favor? That's not the way I expect us to do the work at this table.
Any other comments?
I think it would help if we got information from the other boards
I think,
about some of the issues, so when we are evaluating proponents, that we take those into account. And we can ask specific questions.
Well,
related to
That would be
those.
helpful.
It's part of the process, is what you're saying. In other words, that once the process is out there, we get feedback from all the various boards as to what you would like to see in a town council, what kind of,
Yeah,
what areas of
what worked,
expertise.
what didn't work.
Yeah, okay. Is that acceptable to the board?
It's fair.
yeah.
Very good.
So let me get this clear. The language, it says expected to be 3 years, is that going to be
That'll stay in.
removed or
No,
stay in?
That'll stay in.
Because it does give the ability of the board to make its own determination on that.
Fair enough.
It's just sort of an understanding, but it's not, and it's acknowledged, even in the recent, the recent letter of agreement.
So can I have a motion to approve the RFP with the changes submitted by Ginny for the introductory piece.
Okay, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen approve the request for proposal for new town council as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0. Okay, the next item is the open meeting law complaint procedure. Bill has finalized this.
Yes, the board at their last discussion on this plan, I think it was in August, maybe even late July, we submitted this, we circulated this to all the various boards and committees, and then I got one piece of feedback which caused me to pause a bit, just saying that the actual complaints have to be submitted have to be submitted to the board which actually committed the violation. They cannot be centralized and submitted to us. So I actually went back and I asked the AG's office their opinion of that. First of all, they were very complimentary of the process that you all agreed to, and they thought this was, actually a very good policy. And they went back and they said, geez, they didn't think it was a problem initially, but then they went back and reviewed it and said, it is a concern. So so I went back and I changed the language accordingly, resubmitted it for their consideration. They said it was fine. So what you have before you tonight is what's been reviewed by the AG's office. So,
Can I make a suggestion? I think when I brought this up, I was more concerned with steps 2 through 6.
Yep.
Starting with within 14 days of the date in which a complaint was filed with the public body. Step number 1 basically reiterates what the state says, and I think that's why we're having this issue, because we're trying to mimic what the state law is. So if resident Jones wants to come and file a complaint, that's not within our purview. They follow the state guidelines, they bring it to whoever, if they want to drop it off with whoever. Nothing to do with us. Our responsibility and our procedure starts with step 2 that says within 14 days of that, this is what we do. We don't go to the town manager. We don't, we collectively bring it to the board. I would say strike step 1 altogether, because when the state changes their policy, we've got to go back and change our step 2, step 1.
Or should you say that the filing complaint will follow the current law,
Well, I think
current state law?
that's not even up to us. If someone wants to file a complaint in the wrong place or 20 days late, that's their responsibility for, whatever the complaint is in their process, that their due diligence. But when it comes to our doors, step 2 is what we are responsible for. So I would say get rid of step 1 altogether.
I don't know, I just think if you're gonna, that's the beginning, so I don't know, it's a guide for whoever's gonna, oh, you're saying, this is just for us?
This is just for us.
Okay,
So step 1 should say within 14 days of a complaint is filed,
Yeah.
we should do X, Y, and Z.
Okay, now I see your point.
So you just want to change the title to be response to open meeting law complaints.
Town of Foxborough open meeting law complaint procedure. I think that's the procedure. When someone files it, this is our procedure.
No, Jim is right, because our work begins here. He is
Yeah,
correct.
but I'm just saying the title, this isn't the procedure to file an open meeting law complaint, which is what step number 1 is. So this is a procedure for us to respond to an open meeting law complaint.
Law.
So Town of Foxborough open meeting law
Oh,
response procedure.
Right.
Response procedure.
So strike step 1.
Open meeting law complaint response, you need the word complaint in there.
Right.
And change complaint to response.
No, leave complaint in there and just put the word response right after it. It's open
Oh,
meeting law
Law
complaint response,
procedure.
because we are responding to a complaint.
Okay. Yeah.
And just renumber the steps.
Just take out 1.
Anything else, Jim?
Just renumber.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's the only change you had, right, was the
Yeah.
town
that
manager
was it.
versus public body?
And it's reflected in the lower, in the new step 1, so. Okay.
Okay, so
So I need a motion to
Yeah,
approve the
I'll-
revised procedure.
I'll do this. I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the amended Town of Foxborough open meeting law complaint response procedure and its renumbering of the steps within.
Fair enough.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks very much, Bill.
All right, thank you.
Very good.
Dave, you're on.
Next item is the town hall update. Dave Fellman.
Thanks, Lorraine. It's getting late, so we'll make this quick. Like Bill said earlier, we had a follow-up town hall meeting, and it was very productive. I think we had a pretty good discussion. I don't think we're in full agreement with everybody on the committee, but I think we have a majority, and I think we can see each other's point and where they're coming from. Our biggest concern relative to the renovation comes into play with what's going to be left over in the square footage, and does it meet what the working group has identified as actual needs. Once you get into plan coordination and looking at ceiling heights and running sprinkler lines and 8-foot ceilings, you start to lose square footage. So I think we talked about that today. It was a good discussion, and I think we're moving in the right direction. Regarding the RFP, it is on the street. There's been 29 respondents so far.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. It's really good.
It's out there.
Mhm.
And when's the due date for the,
So-
to come in?
On the RFP deadline for submission is October 10th.
That's a week from Friday.
Right.
Week from next Friday. 2 weeks.
The interview of candidates will be between 10:20 and 10:24, and the committee will have a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on or around 10:28. And then the OPM is kind of on a parallel path with that.
Mhm.
That'll come by, the interview for the OPM will be between 10:27 and 10:31 with a recommendation by 11:11. And then we'll have the number to present to town meeting. So, that's it. Short and sweet.
Very good. Thank you.
It's
job.
just, we're in the process of trying to do a public information campaign. And so to the extent that board members can assist in that effort, that's certainly helpful, because I know this board has unanimously supported this effort. So to that extent, we really, we want to get the word out as much as we can about what we're doing. Unfortunately, there's been a number of editorials circulated which have, tried to derail folks on this process, and I actually had a conversation with a couple of people just right off the cuff today, and after I explained to them that the information is not the full picture as to what you're supposed to be seeing, it caused them to pause. So I think that's what we want to do, is we want to at least present people with the residents with the full picture of what we've been doing. We have one person who feels very strongly about a renovation project, but we've identified there's a lot of reasons why we don't want to do that, and why it doesn't make sense to do that. I just spent a week at a national conference talking to various consultants about this particular project, and to a person, they all recommended that the direction that we should go is to build a new building. So there's no redeemable reasons why a renovation should be pursued. This is not an historic building. This is not a there's no materials in the building that would warrant it to be savable in that respect. There's no mahogany finishes. There's no granite. There's no marble or anything like that nature. There are many renovation projects that have gone on throughout the state and throughout the country, for that matter, but those are typically done on buildings that contain those kinds of finishes and are very historic. They're in 1800s, built in the 1800s, or major state buildings, or even national buildings, federal buildings that require those kind of renovations. We're dealing with a building that is a pretty basic building for the most part, and it never was really fully finished. If you look at the HVAC system was never really fully connected. There is, we're going to have a lot of ADA requirements, a lot of structural shoring requirements that are all required through the codes now, through the new building codes. And as such, this is a project that's going to require a very in-depth, we require some significant removal of most of the pieces of the building in order to make that happen. And at the end of the day, we're still going to have an old building. So if we're going to make that level of that level of investment, it's the vast majority of the members of the committee that believe we should build a new building. So, that's that in a nutshell is where we're at, and I think that we've tried to convey that message. I'm going to be doing a television show on October 10th about that. I'm going to be speaking to several groups about the project so that people understand the reasons how we've gotten to this point and why we're recommending what we're recommending. So at the end of the day, we hope that people will understand and vote, with a full amount of information about the project and why we've reached the conclusion that we did. Any questions or thoughts?
You had said earlier the vast majority of the board wants to go, not the board, but the building committee. Is it one person?
It's really one person. Yeah,
There's no people from his committee from before or anyone else on the board that says, we've studied it, but this has merit to renovate it because of X, Y, and Z. It's one person.
It's really one person who's pursuing that.
Now, where this one person is very vocal and the campaign or the information, you do well on TV, you look good.
Gee, thanks.
But to get that information out there, and I've said it before, every other building project has had a group that has been excited, that has gone and gone door to door, basically. We just don't do it. We don't. This table hasn't done it. The permanent building committee. The information's there on spreadsheets and pictures, and now on TV. But those letters are still going to come to the newspaper. Those, and it's almost a sport to say, I've had a house for 40 years. I don't knock it down. It's apples to oranges here.
Yeah,
there's nothing on that building that you look at and you can work around. There's nothing salvageable. The inside petitions, the MEP mechanical, you go downstairs, there's a 10-foot wide big hole in the ground that pumps out stormwater and sewer at the same time. There's nothing salvageable. The stuff that you got to put in it, the elevators and the bathrooms and all that stuff, it's a complete retrofit other than the brick facade.
And even that needs work.
Even that.
And
But
even
the
that needs a
windows are
lot of
gone,
work.
the roof is gone.
Right.
So unless someone stands up and says, I'm going to be, going door to door and this is what I'm going to do it, we're going to have a tough time. And it's all the little bumps along the road, people just love to pick on town hall for, whatever reason. So it's hard to find an advocacy group other than.
We're it.
We're it.
Yeah.
And we're stumbling, I'll be
is.
honest with you.
It is.
When, items that come up that, we were dealing with A, they get mad at it. Now they're going to vote for B because they don't like the selectmen. So that's the mentality, and it's no different than any other town. But we got to figure out a way to get the word out, to get people excited about it.
Well, I think and I actually went to a seminar on this a couple days ago, actually. And one of the things that they raised, which really made a whole lot of sense to me, was the fact that this isn't just a building. This is your center of government. And this is something you should all be proud of. And I've heard people say, well, it's only for 30 people. This is for literally thousands of people in this community who walk through those doors at one point or another for a meeting, to get a permit, to pay their taxes, to do their town business. Now, a lot of people never go to town hall. That's understood, and therefore they're gonna be sort of ambivalent about the whole thing. But I will tell you though that the government works through the four corners of that building, and quite honestly, the current building doesn't function very well. The people function well, but the building doesn't function well at all. And so I think we really need to think about it in those terms. This is the center of our government. This is a very proud community. We should take pride in the fact that we have a building that they call the center of our government. And we've taken pride in virtually everything else we've done. I mean, this is the one piece that's remaining that needs to be done. And I think that's the focal point.
And I'll even take it a step further. At the beginning of our meeting tonight, we're talking about liquor licenses, and it'd be good to build, a different, business base and attract business. you know, as an engineer, when I come into a town hall with a client and I want to roll down a plan, you want an environment where you have some space,
Right.
some integrity, that there's a building department, there's assessors, and right now when someone comes in, they're standing in a hall because there's no place to go. And granted, yeah, we can renovate it and make it the same afterwards, but to conduct business for a population of 19,000 plus or minus people, from what I see from, you know, the other town halls, we're so far behind
Yeah, it really is.
on an acceptable front door to the town.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
what we have going against us is if you stand out and look at the building, it's got the cupola, it's got the brick, it's
Right.
got the white, you know, it looks colonial.
Doesn't look half bad.
Yeah, but, and that's why I asked if it was just one person, because if it was a debate that's been going on with the building committee that has worked on, you know, all the other projects, I would say, all right, maybe there's some merit, but I have not found one person that has looked at it from an architectural engineering site survey that says there's merit to rebuilding this building.
No,
And at the
I
end of the
agree.
day, you're gonna
I agree.
get a much better product by renovating. It's just not out there.
That's right.
But what's out there is the excitement to read a letter and say, I'm not gonna vote for it, so.
We think that by building new, you're gonna get long-term value for the dollar spent versus a renovation or a gut rehab where if you don't go all the way, you're doing the town a disservice.
I think Bill's letter, I think it was 2 weeks ago, you wrote a letter to the reporter to sort of set the record, set it
Yeah.
straight.
Right.
And I think it was a good explanation. And that sort of countered some of the other opposing
And,
letters to the editor.
and there's going to be more of that, because we have others that are going to write, because they feel so compelled to set the record straight. I mean, it's unfortunate, but there seems to be this swell of support for, you know, an untrue scenario. I mean, could you absolutely renovate? You could, absolutely. There's no question about it. But is it the right thing to do? And the answer is no. I mean, we think that it's spending good money after bad, and we don't recommend you do that for that reason. And you know, and I've tried to say this to people, that I probably have the most objective perspective, and David's probably right behind me. We came onto this committee brand new. I had no dog in this fight when I came here. That this was strictly, you know, let me take a look at this thing and see what makes sense. And I looked at the renovation because, you know, on its face value, it seems to be, it might save you money. But when we start peeling back the layers and looking at everything, it's not going to save you money. I mean, it may save you money on the initial investment, but over the longer term, it's going to cost you more. So I don't think it's the right decision to make. I think we shouldn't be short-sighted here. We need to be long-sighted and to think what's the best thing for the town overall. And I think David's probably one of the best examples of, you know, when I first had a conversation with him, he was very much in the camp of, you know, let's renovate.
Dave campaigned against it.
Yeah, that's right. To renovate.
Campaigned on the issue.
That's right. To renovate.
And I say that because
renovate the building.
you know, when we
Yes.
made that decision to who's
Yeah.
going to be on the committee, I mean, it didn't take me long to read Castleboo's. At the very beginning, I said it's got to be a knockdown, you know, side-by-side
Right.
comparison. I don't think any one of us went into this year saying we don't have baggage because we're maybe too close to it. So
We've been at it for 10 years.
yeah. So when Dave came, I said, all right, here's a guy
Let the new guy do it.
that is in the business that says, I do this for a living
Yeah.
and it needs to be renovated.
Yeah, and he's brought a lot of good thoughts to the table, too.
Yeah.
So,
I'll tell you, once you get into the building and you start looking at the construction and what really needs to be done to do a full gut rehab, there's no long-term dollar value to
You
it.
almost have
No.
to tear the building down or rehab it.
You have to pull the building apart piece by piece
yeah,
to do what you need to do. And then,
including the facade.
Yeah.
Including the
Because-
facade.
you know, part of the plan was just to address the areas that are known to be suspect. But that's not, when you do a gut rehab, you got to do a full envelope study and identify all potential areas. If you want it to be a good building envelope for the next 50 years, you have to address it now. Otherwise, you're just gonna be throwing, you know, good money after bad. It's gonna be an expensive building to operate. So by building new, you can take advantage of today's building methods, energy codes, and really maximize your efficiency in a footprint that works for everybody.
Well, Dave, I said a while ago, I really find it odd that we would throw buildings away. That's not a very old building.
Mhm.
And I was like you.
Yeah.
I I think it sits well into the plot that it's on. It
Mhm.
looks good from the street.
Yep.
I've spent some time down in the basement there, and it just, it took me a while, and I'm not a builder, but it took me a while to resolve that it has to go.
You can replicate that building very easily.
Yeah, you can.
And for, you know,
With a better interior,
construction,
with a
better
better
construction.
better interior, better construction.
Oh, I think we sort of are leaning in that direction to have a
Right.
nice New England town look.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that might have been one of the fears that people had if we tore it down and rebuilt it, that it wasn't going to be similar to what we have now, because people like that look of it, you know. the look.
This is like the $6 million man, you know, we can rebuild and make him better, you know? But I mean that in the sense that we really have to think about what we have here. We have a scenario where we have to really take it apart, take it down, and start over, because and it's interesting, I was, without even soliciting this comment today, a gentleman walked in to meet with me today and wanted to meet with me on a project he was working on. And he said to me, he said, you know, I actually do this type of construction all over the place. He says, and he said, boy, this building's in tough shape. I said, yeah. I said, you know, it's interesting that we're having this conversation this afternoon. He said, what do you do? He said, well, I renovate buildings. He said, and I build new buildings. I said, would you consider renovating this building? He said, absolutely not. He says, this doesn't make any sense to renovate, because there's nothing in here that's solid. And he just was there for 10 minutes looking around. Why would you?
And you didn't bring them downstairs.
I didn't even bring it downstairs. He looked at the outside and the inside, and he says, there's no reason to save this. If I was given this project, I would tear it down and build a brand new building. It's better, more efficient, and a better value for the dollar over the longer term.
So, I mean, these are the discussions that publicly we have to have, not
Right.
in a building committee that nobody sees.
Right.
And honestly, we're not blowing smoke. This was not orchestrated.
No.
But if there's a group out there, other than the one person, that said there's merit in renovating because I've done it before, or
Yeah.
it makes sense, or
I'm all ears. Yeah.
you know, you do it, I do it every day. This is my work
Yeah.
on town halls, senior centers, and there's
Right.
no value in the long run for putting the money to renovate
No.
something that is just not substantial to begin with.
And there were a lot of folks in the community that were very conservative, and I recognize that. And we really suspect, we really respect that they are the ones that want to make sure that we're spending the dollars wisely. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do here. That's our number one goal, is to make sure we spend the money wisely and on top of that, we have a plan to maintain it afterwards. That has to be part of the equation. And if
That's
it's
something that didn't exist in this town
and this
forever.
has to happen.
And that's a key selling point.
Right, key selling point.
So the other thing is, the dollars are going to be clearly defined to the voters before they vote.
Right.
It's not going to be open-ended, it's not going to be a budget number, it's going to be actual numbers.
This is the number we're going to use.
And the piece we don't talk about that much is, if this was done 3 years ago, the bids that are coming in now are a lot higher than they were 3 years ago. Everyone's busy.
Construction costs have gone up 20%.
And the incline, luckily, the interest rates have not bumped up, but every contractor that is out there is busy right now.
Well, this is a very important piece of information for the public to know, that every quarter that we miss by not doing this project, it's about a $60,000 bump in the cost. So by waiting, we're actually spending money that we should be spending on the building, and not just wasting. So we can't continue to wait, because it's becoming more expensive as we do it. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a great update. Thanks for the discussion. Okay, Bill, so you're going to give us the town manager update?
Yes, just briefly, I was away last week. I was at the International City Managers meeting in Charlotte, North Carolina, for five days, and it was a great meeting. I actually got to talk to a number of my colleagues around the country about our projects, stuff that we're working on, and saw some great sessions on dealing with difficult issues such as the one we're dealing with, and how we can just convey the message that how important these things are, because it's not always as simple as black and white for a lot of people. There's a lot of gray in between that people need to understand. So we're going to try and do a better job of that, and I think I have a couple strategies that I picked up from that I'll be able to use. I got a lot of compliments on my new assistant, by the way. A lot of the Massachusetts folks all congratulated me on that selection, so that was good news to hear that, and appreciative of my colleagues.
Has she started yet, or is that?
October 6th,
October
she'll be
6th,
here,
okay.
but she will be here tomorrow to work on the health fair. So we'll be having that tomorrow as well. She'll be here for a little while for that. And then I've been working on goals and objectives with all the department heads individually. I've been grouping people together in sort of modules or nodules of focus groups. I've had a cultural and recreation group. I've had a health and human services group. I've had a public works group, a finance group, and an education group, as well as a public safety group. And we're bringing everybody together in those discussions and setting goals that way, as opposed to so that there's a cross-discussion, cross-pollination of ideas. And today was very interesting to watch how people they talk to each other all the time, but they don't really think about themselves and how they can feed off each other and how they can, make their programs more successful, and reaching out to the community and making them making use of what they currently offer. So I think it was a good conversation. It's been a very good process so far. Just two things that I want the board to be aware of. At the next meeting, I'll be bringing you an agreement on the TSUs, which are the ATV vehicles that were actually donated to us by the craft group for the use of the stadium and for use in the community. There's an agreement that we've been working on, and we should have that for you for next meeting. And also have an update you from Attorney John Davis on the recent insurance case. So he'll be here to update you in executive session on that. All right, and then I think that's it. That's it. I've been just trying to get myself reacclimated.
Okay, thank you. All right, 9:15.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
Yes, please.
I just made one.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
All right.